WZAB Sweetwater, South Florida's only business radio station.
That's it. Turn it around.
It's Down to Business with Jack Miller. Forget what they teach you in school. This is real life. Not Wall Street, but Main Street. A real show on what's really involved with starting and running a business. All the ups and downs. Our guests will answer your questions and provide you with valuable information. Stay tuned and join in the conversation. Call us at 305-541-2350. Follow us on Facebook at Jack Miller Down to Business or on Twitter at HJackMiller1.
Thank you for sticking with us. I appreciate it, folks, during those commercial breaks. Sydney, can we talk about for a minute what powers the government has? For example, what exactly is stacking? And what is, I didn't realize, for example, that they didn't have to tell you what evidence they have against you. And it's all right for them to, I don't want to say make up stories, but effectively make up stories.
They do make up a lot of things. Stacking is adding on additional charges that really don't need to be added. Often one particular act can violate multiple statutes, and technically, as long as there's a different element to each of those statutes under the law, it's appropriate or possible to charge somebody for each of those. But that results particularly with the enactment of the sentencing guidelines, which are a whole nother problem, that are rather rigid and complicated formulas pursuant to which judges are supposed to sentence people. The more counts there are, the more it ratchets up the likelihood and length of imprisonment under the sentencing guidelines, and really is unfair for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is the sentencing guidelines simply don't take into account the appropriateness of probation for anybody. So it results in lengthy terms of incarceration, even for first-time nonviolent offenders for things, whether it be and mandatory minimum sentences, whether it be for minor drug possession when no one else was injured, to white-collar crime when there's absolutely no reason for certain people to be in prison. Prison should be reserved for people that are dangerous, not just people we are mad at. I mean, it might be appropriate to have some term of shock imprisonment so that people can get a feeling for what it would be like if they don't follow the rules, and then they go back if they continue to have problems. But we don't need our prisons full of people who could be working, supporting their families, raising their children, and paying taxes instead of sucking the resources and literally wasting time and human resources by being incarcerated where they do no good for anyone.
Isn't another reason that the prosecutors use stacking to really threaten and put pressure on the individuals? So in other words...
completely.
So if they do something that maybe would have a maximum of 2 years, they'll throw on 20 or 30 charges, hoping one sticks. And that way they'll say, hey, unless you make a deal, you could go away for 50 years or your life or whatever it is.
That, plus with the addition of each charge, it costs you even more to defend yourself against it, to the point it becomes impossible for people to afford an appropriate defense. That's one of the things Judge Rakoff pointed out in his article. Sometimes it's just a combination of physical, financial, and emotional exhaustion that causes people to plead guilty when they've done absolutely nothing wrong. It's an outrage. A single federal prosecutor is probably the single most powerful person in the country, because they can bring charges against you that have absolutely no basis and get a grand jury to rubber stamp it. And your life is ruined and turned upside down, as well as that of your family, from the minute you're indicted.
So walk our audience through, because I don't think people realize what happens if you're caught in that system. Guilty or innocent, it doesn't matter. But, people think, I'm not found guilty, I just walk away. But it's not so simple.
For those just tuning in, we are speaking with author Sidney Powell, who has written a book that should be a bestseller, License to Lie, about the corruption in our criminal justice system.
Let me tell you something. Not only should this be a bestseller, I was literally thinking about it before. This is a movie.
Oh,
Absolutely.
It definitely should be a movie.
I can see it right now. I mean, it's a movie like...
Let me tell you, Sydney, I'm a capitalist, and this show is usually about business, and I spend 99% of my time thinking about making money. I'd love to talk to you about doing the rights on this, because this is a rivet. This is an unbelievable story. It's like a Bond thriller. It's just unbelievable.
That's right.
But anyway, talk about what happens when someone gets caught on this system. You know, the damage it does to their families and to them.
It is. It's really incomprehensible unless you have been through it yourself or you take the time to read License to Lie, sometimes even 2 or 3 times to absorb all of it and realize what happened to 4 Merrill Lynch executives, for example, who had been stellar members of their community, but they were indicted as part of the Enron scandal just because Merrill Lynch itself did a small and financially insignificant business deal with Enron that Enron actually made $53 million off of and was a completely real transaction. But because the prosecutor's view of it differed from the defendant's view of it, the prosecutors indicted them on an honest services charge, which was bogus from the get-go. They made up the charges in the indictment, piecing together parts of different statutes. At the same time, they yellow highlighted but hid evidence that they knew showed the defendants were innocent. They hid that evidence for 6 years. We couldn't even get the Merrill Lynch defendants bail pending appeal. So they went to prison as soon as they were sentenced for crimes that weren't really crimes. The Fifth Circuit a year later held that their conduct was not criminal as charged, let them all out of prison. But in the meantime, the prosecutors who had hidden the evidence that showed they were innocent managed to keep that evidence hidden for 6 years, and the prosecutors became Chief White House Counsel, President Obama's longest-serving Chief White House Counsel, Deputy Director of the FBI, Acting Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice under Bush, who then micromanaged and corrupted the prosecution of former Alaska Senator Ted Stevens, thereby changing the balance of power in the United States Senate and costing Alaska its longest-serving United States Senator. And another is now Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice. One of the former Enron task force prosecutors is Obama's counterterrorism advisor. I mean, they are what I call a corrupt cabal of prosecutors who have been running the country and holding extremely powerful positions for the last 6 or 7 years.
And what happens to the guys who served in jail? Oops, we're sorry. Their lives
they didn't even say they were sorry.
No, I was being sarcastic. Their lives are ruined. Do you know what kind of post-traumatic stress they have? The effects on their family? It's unbelievable. This whole thing is unbelievable. I would tell everyone again, go to License to Lie, Sidney Powell. This is just a riveting book.
Now, this is a business show on some level, so I wanted to ask, I mean, you're showing from one side, you're showing the corruption in the criminal justice system, but the prison system in and of itself, and it's well documented how big of a problem we have with incarceration in this country, the prison system in itself is big business. I mean, isn't that part of the problem?
It's business, and unfortunately, it's an extremely corrupt business. You need to read Bernard Kerrick's book, From Jailer to Jailed, to get the inside perspective on that and kind of the other side of the same coin that I'm talking about in License to Lie. Between the two of those books, you get a complete perspective of what a mess our system is in. But, we must make it better. The first step is for everybody to understand that this can happen to you. I don't care how legitimate a business person you think you are, or how much money you have, or the resources of your company that it has to defend you. You can wind up going to prison just like the head of Merrill's investment banking division did for a year for something that wasn't even a crime.
But how do people protect themselves against a system that's so corrupt and clearly rigged in the favor of, big business and big government compared to just an individual getting caught in the wrong place at the wrong time?
First, it's a matter of understanding what you're up against. And then secondly, it's a matter of working and speaking out to change the system starting now. I believe that License to Lie and the work that Judge Kaczynski has done on this topic and a lot of other people as well, Fix Criminal Justice, the the Koch brothers, the American Civil Liberties Union, the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. There is now a massive bipartisan effort, the American Coalition for Criminal Justice Reform. A lot of people are understanding now that this problem is way too widespread and runs deep, and that we must take matters in our own hands to fix it.
So this is timely. We have the Republican debate tonight, and are any of the personalities and people that are going to be involved in that on either side of the aisle, frankly, are any of them allies of what you're trying to accomplish here and what needs to be done?
Well, I know that at least 4 of them have the book, and I know that 2 of them definitely get it. I believe Scott Walker fully understands the problems. I believe that Rick Perry fully understands these problems. In fact, I've written articles on the New York Observer at observer.com on all kinds of current events, including the ridiculous indictment against Rick Perry and the John Doe investigations that affected a lot of Scott Walker's friends and colleagues, the outrageous prosecutorial misconduct in those cases, and of course also my most recent article, which was also picked up on Drudge, is about Judge Emmett Sullivan, who's one of the heroes in License to Lie. He's the man who has been all over IRS and now is all over the State Department and Hillary about getting the emails that have been destroyed and or missing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's the judge who appointed a special prosecutor to investigate the Department of Justice itself in the corrupted prosecution of Senator Ted Stevens.
We have to take a break in like 30 seconds, but when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about the Rick Perry case, what you think is going to happen to that, as well as Hillary Clinton, and see what your opinion is on her and the emails and that whole scandal. So stick with us for another 2-3 minutes, and we'll be right back with the commercial break.